Hey, what's up guys? So it's time to take an updated look at the very best windshield mount radar detectors currently available on the market. Now, first things first, if you're looking for something super simple, easy to use, plug and play, and you can just kind of throw it on the windshield and it'll do everything for you, take a look at the Escort Max 360C. The trade-off with the 360C though is that while it does offer good performance, it's not necessarily going to be the longest range radar detector available. Next, if you'd like a nice long range radar detector and you like the idea of the 360C where everything is integrated into one package, take a look at the Uniden R7. This offers a fantastic level of performance, but the trade-off is you are going to be getting some more false alerts, and some of the false alert training that you're going to be doing with the detector initially is going to be manual instead of the detector doing more of the work for you. Now, if you'd like a detector that offers long-range performance, good false alert filtering, and can do a lot of the false alert filtering automatically, take a look at the Valentine 1 Gen 2, specifically when paired with an iPhone or Android. The trade-off here is to get a lot of the features that you want, you're going to want to tie it in with your cell phone and pair it with a third-party app. And doing this, there is going to be a little bit more of initial setup and kind of a learning curve depending on which app you're using and which features you want. But this is going to be a really good all-around package, again, as long as you tie it in with your phone to add some additional core functionality. And then finally, if your priority is not just traditional radar detection, but also MRCD and MRCT detection, as well as RDD immunity, in that case, take a look at the Radenso Pro M. Now, something to keep in mind with all of these detectors here, COVID-19 is kind of throwing a wrench into everything right now, and that's going to be affecting availability with a lot of these detectors. For example, Valentine now has actually shut down until they're able to go back into the office and resume working normally, so you can't even order a V1 Gen 2 and have it shipped to you anymore. And because things are kind of weird right now, down in the video description, I'm going to link you guys to maybe several different places where you can order these different radar detectors. Take a look at all of them. Shipping times and delays may vary, and availability may vary too. And so definitely take a look there at the couple different links and see which one is going to work out best for you once you guys are ready to order. So now with that said, let's take a closer look at all the main features and differences between all the different detectors to really help you figure out which one is best suited for you. Now, first things first, when it comes to range, all of these detectors are going to be protecting you in almost every single situation, realistically. That's why they're here on this list in the first place. Now, that said, in some situations, if you're demanding the highest level of protection, I would actually point you towards the R7 and the V1 Gen 2. And that would apply if you're driving in situations like maybe mountains, curves, hills with things like trees that can block and absorb the radar signal. You're going to want every ounce of detection capability you have. Additionally, if you're driving in maybe the wide open desert and maybe your only advanced warning as an officer 5, 6, 8, 10 miles down the road, clocking a vehicle up ahead of you and then turning off his radar gun to avoid detection, that advanced warning may be the difference between a ticket or not. And in those situations, you may actually want to opt for a detector with the highest level of performance. Again, in most situations, all of these detectors realistically will be able to give you sufficient advanced warning, but in the most challenging of situations, that's where you'll see detectors like the R7 and the V1 Gen 2 really set themselves apart. Now, another big difference between these detectors is their false alert filtering, and there's a couple different sources of false alerts. Let's start with blind spot filtering, and specifically to filter out cars, nearby cars that have blind spot radar and other collision avoidance systems built into their car. No detector can filter out all of them, but there are some differences here between the detectors. It's tough to really clearly delineate these, but just driving around with the detectors for a while and hearing your guys' experiences as well, here's the differences that I find. Now, the Uniden R7 I do find to be the chattiest detector. There have been some improvements made with the detector, but I do still find it to be the noisiest detector with the most amount of false alerts. It's definitely better than it was initially, but that's, I think, probably one of the biggest complaints that I hear with that detector. Next, the Escort Max 360C, I think does an even better job at filtering out a lot of the annoying blind spot falses. Then the Radenso Pro M is going to be doing a better job still, able to filter out Hondas and Acuras, for example. So it's going to be filtering out the most amount of vehicles. Next, we've got the Valentine 1 Gen 2, which does false to Hondas and Acuras, but the way that it falses overall, I find it to just be a quieter package as a whole than even the Radenso Pro M, especially when you're going to be pairing it with the phone to add some additional filtering capabilities. And so I think I would actually give the edge in terms of ultimate blind spot filtering to the new V1 Gen 2, and specifically when you're pairing it with the phone, especially the Android app JBV1. But even on iPhone, you can add some additional filtering too. Next, another big difference is if you want a detector with arrows. 3 of these detectors are going to offer arrows to help point you towards the alert, to help you figure out if the officer is ahead of you or back behind. If you maybe pass an officer, but there's now a second officer up ahead, the arrow can flip from behind to front and let you know that there's another threat still yet to come. And so while you don't necessarily need arrows, a lot of us find it extremely useful and helpful. So the R7, V1, and Max 360C all will have arrows, whereas the Radenso Pro M does not have that feature. Next, let's talk about GPS functionality. Again, 3 of the detectors will have GPS built in. The Valentine one does not have GPS, and so it's going to be lacking built in some of the filtering capabilities, especially if you're going to be driving around town. Now, there are some workarounds that Valentine offers. Like, for example, some of their built-in filtering options can help filter out some door openers. If you get Savvy, a $69 accessory, it can plug into your car's OBD2 port, and it can give you maybe low-speed muting to help keep the detector quiet around town, whereas the other detectors will rely on GPS built into the detector to do that. And so the V1 is going to be lacking in some of the native features, but you can add it in either with an external accessory or, better yet, using your phone. And so if you tie it in with your phone, all of the detectors are going to have low-speed muting capabilities. Next, on a related note, let's talk about GPS-based lockouts, meaning if you want to filter out any stationary sources of false alerts, automatic door openers in front of grocery stores and shopping centers, or maybe speed signs on the side of the road. The detectors with GPS do have the ability to filter those out in different ways. You've got the Uniden R7 and the Radenso Pro M, which are going to require you to do this manually, meaning when you drive past one of those false alerts, you're going to be pressing a button on the detector to teach it this is a false alert so that it learns that alert and filters it out for you in the future. That way, after you've taught it all the false alerts on your typical commute, it'll filter them all out moving forward. The Escort does it a little bit differently. It has an auto-learn capability, meaning after you pass the same signal several times, it'll start to recognize that as a false alert and automatically start filtering it out for you. That's one of the big benefits of the Escort detector. Instead of you having to teach it where the false alerts are, the Escort will just start to learn it automatically, and the more you drive, the quieter it becomes on its own. That's a big benefit, especially if you're concerned about maybe accidentally locking out a blind spot false or a police officer you don't recognize. It's nice to let the detector take care of that for you. Now, the Valentine one, no GPS, can't do that at all. However, if you pair it with your phone, Bluetooth is built into the detector, and you run an app, you can have that feature actually now taken care of automatically, just like the Escorts, except now the phone is going to be able to do all the learning stuff and then tell your detector when to quiet itself down. On iOS, you're going to be using V1 Driver, a $10 app. It's also available for Android, but the best Android app is going to be JBV1, a free app. And so using the apps with your phone, you can now add in the GPS lockout functionality, and it's actually going to work even better than any of the ones built into the detectors, plus it's also less likely to accidentally lock out a police officer. And so again, it does require you to pair your phone, and yes, you can still have your phone paired to your car stereo, to your helmet if you're a motorcycle rider. It connects really, really well on the background, unlike some of the Escort apps, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. So there's not a lot of downsides. The main downside of having to use an app is, yes, it does require your phone, and yes, there is a little bit more of a learning curve to actually setting it up initially. But again, that's kind of one of the things with the V1 is if you're willing to use your phone and go through a little bit of a learning process, then you can actually have a really good overall package, including automatic GPS lockouts. If you don't want to rely on your phone for auto lockouts, again, I would point you back towards the Escort. Next, we can take a look at red light camera alerts. The detectors with GPS built in can notify you of any red light cameras or speed cameras that don't necessarily transmit radar, and so you're reliant on a GPS database built into the detector that you can update over time, and it'll alert you to those. V1, no GPS, but again, if you're running an app on your phone anyways, like Waze or Google Maps, those have red light camera alerts built in, so chances are with your normal process, you already have that functionality available, even though the V1 itself does not offer that feature. Now, speaking of Waze, Waze is great for cloud alerts, right? alert sharing with other drivers. Other drivers, as they drive around, if they see an officer on the side of the road, they'll mark it in the app, and then you'll get the notification that there's an officer up ahead before you get to him. Very helpful, and obviously that can work with any radar detector. Now, Escort has a feature called Escort Live, where it can do the same thing essentially, but again, more automatically, meaning when your radar detector gets an alert, it'll report that alert to the cloud, and then you'll get notified of other people's alerts as they just drove ahead of you, and now you're coming up next. So it's a lot like Waze, but just more automatic because you don't have to press any buttons on the phone or use voice commands or anything. Your detector takes care of it for you, which is really nice. Waze has a lot more users, which is really important for when you're relying on other users, but Escort Live is a nice additional layer of protection. None of the other detectors offer any sort of capabilities like that, except for maybe the V1 if you're running JBV1 on Android. It can also pull some crowdsourced information and display that on your phone. It's not going to be able to post your alerts to the cloud the way the Escorts do, but it can take a look at other alerts and display that on your phone. But again, if you're already running Waze or something, it's not going to be a huge deal, but JBV1 does offer that kind of built into its app as well. Now, these cloud alerts are usually going to be reliant on your phone, right? Escort with the Max 360C, if you have a Wi-Fi hotspot built into your car, instead of relying on your phone, it can automatically go out to the cloud through the Wi-Fi hotspot in your car, which I find actually works better and more reliably because you don't always have to worry about maybe I didn't launch the app, or I need to manually relaunch it when I get back in the car sometimes, which is kind of annoying even though I left it on yesterday. So sometimes you do have to manually restart the app versus over Wi-Fi. It's just more automatic and just works better automatically. You also get a nice other benefit of when there's red light camera database updates or even firmware updates for your radar detectors to add new features or fix bugs. They automatically will update your detector for you. So again, with the Escort, if you're looking for a more plug and play experience, especially if you have Wi-Fi built into your car, the Max 360C I think is going to be the best choice. Now, if you don't have Wi-Fi in your car and you're cool with taking your detector and just plugging it into your computer for updates periodically, I would actually point you to the original Escort Max 360. It's $150 less than the Max 360C. It doesn't have Wi-Fi, but you've got the same performance, same false alert filtering, same automatic GPS lockout. So if you don't need the Wi-Fi stuff, maybe actually take a look at the original Max 360. Next, let's take a look at low-powered radar detection, and specifically the MRCD and MRCT. The multi-radar guns are now starting to show up all across North America, and you do need a detector that is specifically able to detect them. Here's a list on screen as far as where they're currently in use here in North America, and they're continuing to show up in new states, new cities, new provinces up in Canada as well. Now, as far as MRCD detection, if that's something that you need, I would recommend not getting the Valentine 1 Gen 2. It is not a good detector for any sort of MRCD detection. The Escort, the Max 360C, is capable of detecting the MRCD, but it's not capable of detecting the MRCT. It's reliant on the GPS database to notify you to those instead. If you want MRCD and MRCT detection, the next best choice is going to be the Uniden R7, which is able to detect those, but you're going to be getting some false alerts, but it is able to detect both of them. And then if you're looking actually for the very best MRCD and MRCT detection with the minimum amount of false alerts, I would actually point you towards the Radenso Pro M. And that's a really helpful feature, especially if you have a lot of MRCD. I'm thinking maybe Edmonton, Canada, where you guys have a lot of it. The Radenso Pro M is going to be a fantastic choice, especially for you guys. And next, let's talk about RDD immunity, or a detector that is undetectable by radar detector detectors. For most drivers, this is an unnecessary and unneeded feature. However, radar detectors are illegal in certain areas, namely Virginia, Washington, D.C., commercial vehicles over 10,000 pounds, all vehicles over 18,000 pounds, military bases, and up in Canada, they're legal in only BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, and they are illegal elsewhere. And so if you want a radar detector that is undetectable by radar detector detectors, some people do want that feature, I would actually point you towards the Valentine 1 Gen 2, as well as the Radenso Pro M. I would say maybe stay away from the Escort Max 360C, as well as the Uniden R7. So if you want stealthiness, Pro M or V1 Gen 2. Now, finally, let's take a closer look at price. These detectors usually are going to be around $449 to $499 or so. With the Max 360C, it's going to be the most expensive at $649. But again, if you're not needing the Wi-Fi capabilities or you want to save some cash, maybe go for the original Max 360 at $499. And then if you're watching this and you're like, dude, Vortex, that's way too expensive. I don't want to spend that much on a detector. What about a lower priced option? In that case, I would actually point you towards the Uniden R3. This detector is $299, and this is going to be the best bang for the buck that you'll find in this price range. You've got great performance, you've got good false alert filtering, manual GPS lockouts, red light camera alerts, RDD immunity, MRCD detection. I mean, it's going to be a great detector. There's no auto lockouts, there's no Bluetooth, there is no arrows. I mean, it's only got one antenna instead of two. So like the Pro M, it doesn't have arrows, but if you're looking for a great bang for the buck, the R3 would be the way to go. So there you go. There's a look as far as the main features and differences between all these different detectors. And really, I mean, what you should be looking for if you're deciding which detector is going to be best for you. Again, if you're looking for something super easy, plug and play, I would point you towards the Max 360C. If you want an all-in-one detector like this with really high performance, you're going to be looking at the R7. If you want a high-performance detector with good false alert filtering and you're totally cool with pairing it with your phone, you're going to be looking at the V1 Gen 2. If you want a really good MRCD and RDD immunity, you're going to be looking at the Pro M. If you like, maybe, again, coming back to the Max 360C, a little bit cheaper option, the original Max 360 if you don't need the Wi-Fi and you want to save $150. And if you're looking for the best bang for the buck, Uniden R3 at $299. So again, links in the video description to all of the different detectors and the best places that you can find them. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.